22nd. I have a number of important stories to talk about today. We are streaming the show live on YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, and Instagram. And of course, today is a pretty monumental day. Aside from the fact that today is the official day of the TikTok sale, we don't know what is next for TikTok and this app, but we do know that we are broadening our reach and platforms for the Ignition News so that we can find you everywhere. And so, my challenge to you today, and I have a number of challenges, is to find us everywhere we are. I want to be with you everywhere, as Fleetwood Mac would say. It's great to be here this morning. There's a couple important, let's lighten the mood a little bit. I know we are so heavy all the time. I don't know if you know this, but a couple things about January 22nd I want to let you know. Today is National Hot Sauce Day, something I'm sure Hillary Clinton would appreciate from the comforts of her purse. Do you remember that? Does anyone remember Hillary Clinton with the hot sauce in her purse? It was quite the meme. It is also National Polka Dot Day, of course. It is National Answer Your Cat's Questions Day. So I don't know if any of you have cats with questions. Bring them on up in the chat. We'd be happy to answer. You can, of course, chat in any of our platforms, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Spotify, or Instagram. I'll do my best to answer them while we're covering. It's also National Blonde Brownie Day, National Coming from the Cold Day, which someone remind me that, please, on the chat. You'll know. Okay. Remind me it's National Coming from the Cold today when we talk about Minneapolis and ice. Couple big things that happened on this day. Historically, in 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court decided Roe v. Wade. 1973. Imagine that. That is how quickly a legacy of protections and rights has been taken from us. And of course, also today, for those of you iPhone users, today, I may be dating myself now, but today is the day that the Super Bowl in 1984 was Apple's iconic 1984 Super Bowl ad. Now, isn't it interesting that Apple, a country now no longer led by Steve Jobs, of course, led by Tim Cook, we have actually come into the era that Steve Jobs famously introduced his Mac with that amazing commercial. And now here we find ourselves in an era of government control, media manipulation, and corporate capitulation. Imagine that. 1984, something like 42 years ago, using technology to share the important story of 1984. All these notifications. Who is texting me during the show? Find out who that is. Anyways, isn't it interesting that all these years later, 42 years later, many of the worst concerns of that novel, 1984, are in fact on our doorsteps. And the billionaire who tried to warn us, well, he's no longer with us, replaced by an entirely different billionaire class whose interests are not in advancing the cause of technology, art, fashion, entertainment, writing, creating, building, but in sucking and leeching dragons on the top of their piles of gold and crypto, taking everything from us. They tried to warn us. Orwell tried to warn us in the book. And now, indeed, we have a government which tells you the very same thing. Ignore the very same things you see with your eyes and your ears. It was the party's final command. Let's get into the news today. We've got a few big stories circulating throughout the day. We are, of course, closely monitoring, because the government is apparently not capable of doing a couple of things at once, the major storm that is hitting the southeast of the United States. We'll talk about that if we have any major updates. But welcome to the Ignition News, everybody. It's great to have you on the show. Our camera has frozen again, I see, which is nice. So this is just, we're getting a new camera and a story. Anyways, let's move on to the rest of the show, and let's get into our top stories for the day. Please do follow the show on your favorite platform, especially Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and be sure to listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Substack for details from the show that we don't include on the live stream. So we have 5 main stories today, and I'm going to talk to you about how they all tie together in the end. So let's get to it. Number 1, right now, happening now, Jack Smith is testifying. Former special counsel Jack Smith is testifying publicly before the House Judiciary Committee, and he did not pull any punches. He went straight for the truth today. He stood in front of everyone in Congress. I mean, technically, he sat in front of everyone in Congress, and he said, "I want to be clear. I stand by my decisions as special counsel, including the decision to bring charges against President Trump." He went further. Smith said he had proof beyond a reasonable doubt that President Trump engaged in criminal activity. Specifically, that President Trump engaged in a criminal scheme to overturn the results and prevent the lawful transition of power after the 2020 election. He's further said that Trump illegally kept classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago social club and repeatedly tried to obstruct justice to conceal his continued retention of those documents. You, of course, remember boxes of documents in the tacky Mar-a-Lago bathroom. He made something else very clear, by the way. I was watching the testimony. He said, no one should be above the law in this country. And when Republicans tried to claim that he was politically motivated, he said, the timing and speed of our work reflect the strength of evidence and our confidence that we would have secured convictions at trial. In other words, Jack Smith said to Congress, with a big old set of balls, I would have convicted this president. Went to trial. If I was able to get in front of a jury, he would have been convicted. Anyways, so let that just sink in for a second. The president of the United States is going to court as a private citizen to stop his own Justice Department from releasing a report about his crimes. And of course, he's blocking the release of the Epstein files. Let's go ahead and get into our next story. Everyone, welcome to the Ignition News. This is your daily news source for important updates, uncensored news. I'm actually going to tie together a story that we talked about and talk about why we do the Ignition News. And if you've been following the show for a while, you're going to hear a story today that we've closed the loop on. So let's get into it. Let's connect the next stop, by the way. DHS is freaking out about ICE getting doxxed. ICE agents across the country are claiming, they're whining, that they're getting doxxed for having their personal information published online. They're using this as justification, of course, for wearing masks out in public, refusing to identify themselves, and increasingly aggressive tactics. DHS has been putting out press releases about threats against ICE agents. They're talking about flyers in neighborhoods, posts on Reddit, activists, etc. And DHS claims there's been a 413% increase on assaults in ICE. Now, I want to dive back. I haven't pulled out this number recently, but when they use that number, they say there's been an 800% increase in ICE assaults. There's been a 400% increase in ICE assaults. Well, that number is dramatically inflated, and they're specifically using that number because guess what? When ICE was operating within the constraints of normal law, although let's be honest, we're learning more and more about the terrible tactics this organization deployed, they weren't being subjected to assaults. So when the number goes from 2 to 20, that is a 1,000% increase in that example. Now, of course, we don't condone acts of violence against anyone, but we have to be able to pull apart the information here because they use that big number, 413% or 800% or 1,000%, to make it seem as though there are thousands and thousands of these instances happening every day. The reality is, yes, there are isolated instances, but the other reality is that the training has been dramatically reduced from 115 days to 47 days. They reduced the training to 47 days to appease the president, being the 47th president of the United States of America. They made a meme out of the training. And now they wonder why their operational agents are having all of these issues. And the answer is clear. These are untrained, unprofessional individuals who are not capable of executing law enforcement effectively. Let's take a look, though, at the actual doxing that's happening. What's actually happening, by the way, ICE agents are staying in hotels, eating at restaurants, and operating in public. And when whistleblowers inside DHS released a database about information, it contained thousands of names because these are public employees. They are doing public work with public authority. The administration wants to have it both ways, obviously. They want ICE agents to have power to arrest anyone, anywhere, for any reason, but they also want those agents to operate in complete anonymity. No accountability, no oversight, and apparently no public scrutiny. The reality is we need to abolish ICE. We're talking about something we shouldn't be talking about. This agency does not need to exist. It is younger than I am in its operational scale and scope. And again, we've made the point. There should be no violence, but the violence in our communities is coming from untrained ICE agents terrorizing families. Let us be clear about that. Moving on to the next story. In a similar vein, I'm sure many of you, of course, have seen this, by the way, but the chief of police in Minnesota, Brooklyn Park Chief Police, Mark Bruley, got up in front of the cameras recently, and he had to tell his community about something that's happening. He said he is receiving endless complaints about civil rights violations in our streets from U.S. citizens. every one of these individuals as a person of color who this has happened to. But he also talked about his police officers who are black and brown going out into their community, and his own police officers are being pulled over and harassed and intimidated by ICE. Now, if this isn't a wake up call to the so called back the blue crowd, I don't know what is. And of course, I think the question is obvious. But now you have a white male police chief in a Midwestern community being open. His employees, his team is being harassed in the streets by masked ICE agents, simply apparently because they're brown. And I think the thing that people are not quite realizing yet, thanks to these Kavanaugh stops, where, by the way, the Supreme Court has justified being able to pull you over just because an ICE agent thinks that you might be an immigrant, then they can detain you, they can harass you, and they can do God knows what else. This is a full out assault on our rights. And the point of the story today, the reason I bring this story up is I think that a few of you, probably not people watching this show, but maybe your family, maybe your relatives. I'm sure a few of you have a family member who is a firefighter or who is in the military or who is a police officer or who is an administrative employee with the government or who is a parking ticket monitor, whatever, a mail carrier, any of these things. What we are proving now is that when we don't stand up to this authoritarianism, there is no safe space. You're not safe if you have a badge. You're not safe if you're a firefighter. You're not safe if you are a judge. You're not safe if you're a citizen. It's not targeted enforcement. It's racial profiling. And the thing is, if you think, oh, well, I'm white, so this isn't going to impact me, guess what? They're just going to keep moving down and down and down and down the list. And eventually, you will be the person pulled over on the side of the road, harassed because you didn't look the right way, or because you said something on the internet, or because you were watching what they were doing, recording them legally. This is a maddening assault on our personal liberties and rights, and it's not over. Welcome to the Ignition News, everybody. Please consider following the show on your favorite platforms. It's important that we spread this out. We don't know what the future of TikTok is going to look like, so it's important that you find us elsewhere. We're streaming the show live on YouTube and Twitch right now, even though we have camera difficulties. But please find us elsewhere. We do indeed seem to be living in a 1984 when information is algorithmically suppressed, when the government can lie without accountability to the media. We have to hold each other accountable and provide the news. Our show, Ignition News, is brought to you by Ignite, Fighting Fascism in the Age of Its Rise. It is our signature podcast with 14 episodes and 4 bonus episodes. So if you're wondering, how do I fight fascism? What do I do about these masked agents in my streets? How do I get a hold of my city council? How do I run for office? How do I tell my neighbors who to vote for? Well, go download Ignite, Fighting Fascism in the Age of Its Rise on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Very happy with that guide. When everyone asks you, why is nobody doing something? Well, the answer is because it has to be you. It has to be you. But if you don't know what to do, go download Ignite. It's a free podcast with 14 episodes, 4 bonus episodes, and it is your literal guide to standing up for your democracy, for protecting your neighbors, and for being a better person. Be the first follower. Go download Ignite today. Our next story. Do you notice a theme? Are we noticing a theme? Let's go to ICE and violations of rights. I talked about this story yesterday, but it's getting even more maddening. So here's what we know. 2 whistleblowers came forward to let us know that there was a secret memo that ICE had released recently. And the way that here's how this went down. The policy itself is atrocious, but when I tell you how the policy was released, it's even more alarming. So you had every ICE agent got a call from their supervisor. Come to my office. Come to my office, sit down, read this piece of paper, give it back to me. Don't take notes. Don't take pictures. Read the paper. It's a new policy. Sit in my office. Any questions? Okay, no? Give me the paper back. Get out of my office. We're not talking about this again. That was a sort of paraphrased version of this quote unquote training that ICE supervisors had for every ICE agent. And so you're asking yourself, what was on that piece of paper that they had to sit in secrecy and read, that they couldn't take screenshots of or photos of, they couldn't take notes or really push back in any meaningful way. Well, it was a sweeping policy stating that ICE can now enter your home without a warrant. Now, of course, they will say they have a warrant, and now you've, of course, heard what this warrant is called. It's called a judicial warrant. Judicial warrant, oh, sorry, it is called an administrative warrant. It's an important, I got to get that right. In order to enter your home, the Fourth Amendment, you remember the Fourth Amendment, ICE or any law enforcement agency would need to have a judicial warrant signed by a judge on the quote unquote bench. A judge would review the probable cause, the reason to enter your home, the scope of the law enforcement. They would grant or not grant a warrant. Now, the crazy thing about this, I just want to let you know, judges always issue warrants. It's very, very rare that a judge does not issue a warrant from the bench or the quote unquote bench. So you have to ask yourself, what in the hell is ICE doing that they think they don't even need to go to that step? A judicial warrant is a legal document. An administrative warrant, a 205, they call it an I-205. That's basically copy and paste, print it out, and you've got your quote unquote warrant. It's a fake warrant. It has no judicial backing of law. It's like writing on a sticky note. Here's your warrant. That's what it's like. And so they've got their little sticky note coming to your door and saying, hey, let us in. And guess what happens if you don't let them in? This secret meeting, the secret training that they had, it says you can use force. It doesn't apply constraints to the amount of force they can use, by the way. So ICE had secret trainings to teach their agents that they could basically go into any home they want. And again, you're thinking to yourself, I know you're not, because you're smart, because you're listening to the Ignition News. But maybe your neighbor or your grandma, your mother are sitting down and saying, this does not impact me. I am not an illegal immigrant. I am not concerned about this. That's what they say. That's what they say to themselves. Or I don't like the president, but I support his policies. Guess what? His policy now says ICE can come into your home without a warrant because you pissed them off. You think this doesn't impact me. Well, it does. There have been 170 instances where ICE has detained United States citizens, in some cases for days and days and days. ICE has entered the home of a United States citizen, the wrong home, in Oklahoma. They terrorized a family. You know why? They didn't do the diligence of looking up to see if that home belonged to the right person. The home they entered violently, by the way, belonged to the previous owner. The quote unquote warrant they had was for the previous owner. Do you know how little investigation is required with all the access information and data they have to get that information right? But they completely destroyed the lives of a family in Oklahoma. Entered their home, terrorized them, changed their life forever. On January 11th, by the way, ICE agents rammed through the front door of Garrison Gibson's home in Minneapolis wearing tactical gear with their rifles drawn. They had only an administrative warrant. The AP witnessed this in person. They documented. On January 11th, another incident. This is after Renee Good. ICE agents dragged a half-naked United States citizen named Chong Li Tao out of his St. Paul home in the freezing cold, without a shirt, wearing slippers. They released him. They released that man. I'm sure you saw the footage of that happening. Do you see my point here? They pulled out this old man half naked into the freezing streets, and then they had to release him. Why? Because he was an American citizen with no criminal record. None of you are safe. I'm not safe. You are not safe. Even you big, tough, manly guys, you Mr. Cop, you think you're safe. You're not. They're pulling over cops in Minneapolis. They pulled over a cop in Minneapolis, and she was so scared that she started to video what was happening to her. She's like, oh my God. So she starts videoing. She pulls out her phone to video a police officer, and they knocked the phone out of her hand. A police officer. They assaulted a police officer trying to record what was happening. Why? Why do you think she was trying to record what was happening? Do you think she saw the news and she was absolutely terrified? I think she was. And it's unacceptable. And it doesn't matter if you're a police officer or a postal carrier or if you're a DoorDash driver. These people have no idea what they're doing. And they're terrorizing us so Ice Barbie can go around with her selfie stick, taking photos of quote unquote deportations, the worst of the worst. So let me go ahead and bring this back home. If you're just tuning into the show, I want to let you know, please do follow the show. Follow us on TikTok, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Minnesota. We've got someone in Minnesota. If you want to tell us what's going on, please do. Follow us, find us. I'm going to prove to you why it's important to find the show. It really bothers me to tell you this story right now, by the way. So if you may recall, about a week and a half ago, I covered a story about someone who died in ICE custody. Victor Manuel Diaz, 36 years old. He's from Nicaragua. ICE reported that he died. They said it was a, quote, presumed suicide. Does anyone remember this story? We talked about this on the Ignition News. And I said then, as I'm saying now, something's not right about this. They said he died of a presumed suicide on January 14th. By the way, there is a tent facility in East Montana, a detention facility at Fort Bliss in El Paso. 3 immigrants have died in the past 44 days. These are American concentration camps. I told you to watch what happened with Diaz, but here's what we now know. ICE said he died. He died of suicide. Another one we talked about. Geraldo Lunas Campos, 55 years old, from Cuba. Do you remember this story? Died on January 3rd. ICE originally said he experienced medical distress. They said that they tried to save him. They changed their story a few times, and they said he was attempting suicide, and they tried to intervene. Literally today, I told you this would happen. Literally today, I'm so sorry. I'm getting caught up here. The El Paso County Medical Examiner released the autopsy report. Homicide. Asphyxia due to neck and torso compression. Homicide. Homicide. A man in federal custody being held on an immigration violation, the equivalent of a parking ticket, was killed by 2 guards. 30 people died in ICE custody last year. That is only the ones we know about. We, of course, know that hundreds of people have been abducted by ICE with no paper trail. We, of course, also know that still almost 2,000 people, that number may have changed, but certainly hundreds of people from quote unquote Alligator Alcatraz, we have no idea where they are. And now ICE says a man tried to kill himself or that he killed himself. But what actually happened is they choked him. That's what asphyxiation, they choked him. Why? A 55-year-old man, somebody's father, somebody's maybe grandfather, being held over the equivalent of a parking ticket. This is ethnocentrism. This is racism. This is Christian nationalism. It is the crime of our lifetime. And it's happening in real time. And then, of course, you may have also seen the last story today. I'm sorry if the tone is getting dark here, but we're on a mission. You probably also saw that the Associated Press today has announced that one of the organizers of the Minneapolis protest at the church has been arrested. Arresting a protester. Not the first time. We're seeing on the ground in Minneapolis that protesters are seeing increased violence. Horrific things, tear gas. We have one member of our community who experienced this horrible green gas that they deploy, that ICE deploys. Weeks of medical trauma, physical damage, unable to speak. Who knows what the long-term health effects of this are going to be? Greg Bovino's tossing out gas canisters like it's a Halloween parade. These are the crimes of our lifetime, and we're witnessing them in real time. which is why it's important to talk about the stories we talk about. You're not going to hear you're not going to hear these stories on CBS News. Geraldo Lunas Campos. You're not going to hear about him on your local news, even if you live in El Paso. He was a human being. He was choked to death by ICE. These are just the ones we know about. These are modern day concentration camps. In Germany in 1930, 1933, 1945, these people knew. They knew what was happening. They talked in hushed tones. They saw the smokestacks rising. They saw people being loaded on trains. They told themselves, "Oh, they're relocating them." We're saying that about people in Gaza right now, by the way. Or they're relocating them. They're putting them in a safer place. It's not safe for them to be where they are. Look, they're putting them on trains. Or rumors. An investigator, a medical investigator, who investigated the first death of a Nazi concentration camp. This is an important story. I'll have to dive into this later, so I'm doing only the top line details of this right now. But there was an investigator who investigated the first death of a concentration camp in Germany. What he found out, by the way, was that the same thing. They said it was a suicide. The Nazis, they said it was a suicide. And he investigates, he goes to the camp, and the shot was to the back of the head. And he says, like, this isn't right. Something's wrong here. You don't commit suicide to the back of your head. I'm honestly amazed that our show is still streaming right now. Perhaps there are some better angels in these algorithms than I thought. And he did the same thing. He filled out a report. He said, I think there was a murder at this camp. By the way, do you know who the first people to go to those camps were? Protesters. People who spoke out against the regime. Gay people, queer people. They were some of the first people to be sent to these camps. Immigrants, some of the first people to be sent to these camps. So he filled out his report. He submitted it to his supervisor. And his supervisor said, I'm not signing it. 100 years later, almost 85 years later, look where we find ourselves. This is no longer a conversation about parallel. It's a conversation about you. When you just think of yourself, think right now. Think of that woman who lived in a small town, who saw them building these camps, who saw the smoke, who could unquestionably smell the smell of death. Put her head down. Oh, I got to go to the grocery store. I got to go milk the cows. Other people will worry about this, not me. You have a choice. You have a choice. That's the Ignition News, everyone. Let's cover it up. Let's wrap these stories up for you today. Let's connect the dots. What's happening is a system of enforcement is being built to operate outside of its legal constraints. Jack Smith had evidence of crimes against the president. He was prevented from prosecuting. Now that evidence is being sealed. ICE agents are hiding their identities. They're wearing masks. They're refusing to provide badge numbers. When people try to document their actions, they're being threatened with federal prosecution. Protesters are being arrested for protesting. Those same ICE agents are racially profiling American citizens, including off-duty police officers, by the way. They are demanding papers. Show me your papers. They're now operating under a secret policy whereby they may be able to apparently break into your home without a warrant, violently if necessary. And guess who gets to decide if it's necessary? The untrained agent at your door. And when someone dies in their custody, they blame the victim. Here's why it matters. We would not know any of this if it were not for courageous individuals. Whatever you think of Jack Smith, he's standing in front of Congress today. We would not know about the DHS memo were it not for two whistleblowers. One ICE training officer who quit his job rather than teach this policy. We would not know about what happened in Minneapolis if not for thousands of people taking the time and putting themselves at great risk to show us what is happening there. And we will not know what is happening in your neighborhood, in your town, and in your community if you simply put your head down and pretend. Because now you know. Now you know what will happen if you do. And yes, there is unquestionably great risk. But I think many of you have reached the point that I have reached, which is when I turn left, there's risk. When I turn right, there's risk. And directly in front of me, there's risk, lies, mismanagement, and corruption. There is risk all around us. It is only our moral compass, not the laws now, which guide us. Follow your morality. You know what is the right thing. My specific assignment today: go do your homework about what it takes to legally record what is happening in your community. Invest in the infrastructure necessary to do that if you can. If you can't, form a mutual aid group. If you can't go buy a used GoPro, as an example, get 10 people together to spend $5 and buy one for your community. Put up an advertisement. Beg if you have to. Figure out what it takes to legally record them. Talk to your police. Look if you talk to the Minneapolis chief police today, if you would have talked to him a year ago about recording police, do you think he would have answered you? Probably not. If you were to call him today, I bet you he's already got a fact sheet printed out, ready to go. You will be less afraid when you are put in the moment of danger if you have prepared yourself for that danger. So my challenge for you today on the Ignition News: find out what the law is. Test the law. Push it. And witness. Witness what these people are doing. Hold your ground. Hold your morals. And protect your neighbors. That's the Ignition News. It's January 22nd, 2026. Have hope, friends. We have each other.